and welcome to the Neo News Today podcast. I'm your host, Dylan of Neo News Today. In episode 56 of the NNT pod, I sat down and spoke with Stanislav Bogatyrev, the CIO of Neo SPCC. Neo SPCC is the St. Petersburg-based team that has been building the NeoFS distributed object storage system since late 2018. In this episode, Stan and I talked about why NeoFS was built from scratch, how NeoFS natively interacts with the Neo blockchain, use cases for NeoFS, and how Neo users can interact with it, plus much more. So I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Stan as much as I enjoyed having it. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Dylan with the Neo News Today podcast. Today we are speaking with Stanislav Bogatyrev, the CIO at Neo SPCC. How are you doing today, Stan?
Hello, I'm doing fine. We're having a busy week here in Neo SPCC, releasing new versions of almost everything we have for the N3 testnet. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to digging into that in a little bit. But for maybe a listener who this is the first time that they're listening to the Neo News Today podcast, could you maybe just share a little bit about your background? You've worked at Samsung. You were the head of infrastructure and operations under a financial software company, and you've held various other positions. So could you just give us a brief background of your education and your work experience?
Sure. I was born in a family of Soviet engineers, so it was quite natural for me to choose engineering career. So I was programming since I was very young. So I finished the technical university, then I started to work as a programmer, and then switching to some infrastructure work. And since I had this mix of infrastructure operations and system programming background, I naturally got to work in storage and in low-level control systems. So I worked in EMC, which is Dell now. I was working on object storages and low-level data protection devices. And then I worked mostly on the infrastructure side. I was building cloud infrastructures for one of the first cloud infrastructure providers in Russia. And then I moved to Korea to work for Samsung Research. And then I returned back to Russia to work on NeoFS. So briefly, that's it. So the area of my interests was always data storage, distributed systems, clustering, different system reliability stuff and things like that. So
something that I want to kind of ask about is you have this background in object storage networks, and NeoFS is building a distributed file storage network for the Neo blockchain. So why did you choose to build NeoFS from scratch as opposed to joining another project that was already working on distributed file storage systems?
Other existing projects at that time were not exactly, how to say, interesting enough. So we had a chance to build something from scratch with the features unique to this area. So we wanted to build some solution that is usable for current practical tasks. So the idea was to build a truly decentralized system able to solve tasks that are now mostly solved in a centralized setting. So the other systems were not fitting this requirement. Most of them were just completely public, means all the data was accessible by everyone, and they didn't have any control over the user's data. So you just take some data, push it to the storage network, and you do not know and you cannot control where this data will be stored, how, who will access it, etc. So we wanted to have those things addressed. So we decided to build NeoFS from scratch, starting to design and experiment with different approaches. Because one of the main requirements for such a system is working in an untrusted environment, we did some research in the area of data audit in the untrusted network without the data disclosure. So we came out with an interesting approaches combining the game theory, the homomorphic encryption schemes, etc. And we also wanted this to work on the real storage hardware that we have in existing enterprises, and existing systems that were on the market by that time were not powerful enough to handle the performance required from the storage systems of the enterprise grade. So we started to design the storage engine that would how to say consume or utilize all the hardware power it can have for the storage processing. So this mix of all those approaches and requirements required to build something new completely from scratch. So we didn't have an option to just take some open source system available from the market and adopt it for Neo blockchain. And again, we wanted the system not only to be working locally or as a small cluster, we wanted it to be available from any point of the globe. So it could scale up to the globe size. So again, most of the systems by the time were unable to do this without losing performance or without degrading the reliability. So again, we had to design a completely new part of the system for this. So we just didn't have a choice to join or start to adopting any existing project because there were no projects fitting just any of our requirements.
So it's really interesting that there were these list of requirements that you saw that you needed to have to build a distributed file storage network. One of the key talking points for N3, this third iteration of the Neo mainnet that's going to be launching within the next couple months, is that there's native integration at the blockchain level with NeoFS. So could you just maybe briefly describe to somebody in kind of higher level terms what native integration with NeoFS on the Neo blockchain means?
Sure. That's one of the key features of NeoFS. We wanted to give the smart contracts and distributed applications the ability to manage the data. So right now, storing the data on-chain is prohibitively expensive. With NeoFS, A smart contract can get the data directly from the NeoFS storage network. The distributed application can host the data in the NeoFS network and still control it in a distributed way. So now the distributed application can not only decentralize its code execution, but also decentralize the data of the application. So natively from the N3, you can have the access to the NeoFS data from the smart contract using the Oracle mechanism. And you can manage the access to the data using the Neo wallets. So the NeoFS network user may be identified by the Neo wallet. So having the Neo wallet automatically means that you can use NeoFS, and on the other side, that you can control the access to NeoFS by those wallet identifiers. As for the economical part, the NeoFS uses N3 native gas token for the payments. So you have the utility token of the network to pay for the storage in NeoFS and for the transactions and for the contract execution. So just the same native utility token of the network. Maybe from the high level, that's all. So there are many details, more of a technical significance, but from the user standpoint, maybe it's enough.
Cool. One little thing that we at Neo News Today have tripped up on, and you've had to correct us, is that we have referred to NeoFS as a decentralized file storage system, but it's not. It's a decentralized object storage system. So could you explain the difference between the two so that others don't make the same mistake?
Sure. The file means just the named sequence of bytes. So it's just a piece of data that has a name, and you can. It's mutable by design. The object is more kind of an immutable piece of information, immutable piece of data with a metadata directly attached to it. So in these terms, the NeoFS manipulates with objects. You have an immutable piece of data, the payload, and you have immutable piece of metadata for this data, the set of attributes like the name of the file that was used to produce this object, the owner, and anything you want to attach, like any arbitrary k-value information. The object is addressed by its content. So in a decentralized system, it's very useful. You do not have a file name, you have the hash of the object and its metadata in sum. So if you access some object, you can always be sure that you got what you have requested, because you can calculate the hash and get the same address. We also store the object in containers, so they're also immutable, and that's something like the folder in a file system or the bucket in S3. So that should be, the whole concept should be familiar to the modern web users. Like you create a bucket, you create a container and put objects in it. And as a result, you get some address, which is also immutable and verifiable.
Very cool. So From my perspective, blockchain can sometimes be ubiquitous, everything and everywhere. So, from your perspective, who are the customers or the users that NeoFS was made for?
Primarily, NeoFS was supposed to be used by distributed application developers to let them have the really decentralized data storage for their applications. But we also target the system for the regular web developers because we wanted it to be very practical. So NeoFS does not only support its own native protocol, but which is gRPC based API. We also support the protocol gateways. So you can use the regular browser to access the NeoFS data. For example, you can host the static websites directly on NeoFS and access them using the regular browser. So distributed applications can not only use NeoFS for data storage, but also to host their front end, for example. That means it can be used as a distributed backend for any traditional kind of applications, like websites. For example, you may have the mobile application, which is used worldwide, and you want to allow users to upload, for example, their photos directly from the mobile. So you can do it by integrating this application to NeoFS. The data will be uploaded to the nearest NeoFS node, will be synchronized and distributed in the network according to the policy you set. You can build a custom CDN for your application very easily because of the using the NeoFS storage policy. You can, for example, place your data in a certain region and set up the front ends, caching front ends near that region storage nodes. So the basic CDN functionality is almost built in the NeoFS. You can also may want to use NeoFS as a hybrid data disaster recovery scheme for your backups. For example, you can set up some private nodes in your inside your enterprise perimeter and set up few nodes offsite, create a container with a policy that says store one copy of the data here near my data consumers, data producers inside the perimeter on my node only. And please host one more copy offsite, again on the storage node I trust, and one encrypted copy somewhere on the network. And this will be working scenario. So you can have the hybrid storage. You can only pay for the network for the one copy you store on the external infrastructure, for example. So we have quite flexible mechanisms to make NeoFS fit your requirements. And if you need to store data in more than one location reliably, so NeoFS most probably could fit your requirements.
Those are really interesting examples for how NeoFS can be used. I've been covering the project for a couple of years, and I still learn new things all the time about potential use cases. In a recent workshop that you and Alexei delivered this week for the Neo Frontier Launchpad participants, there was a quick little blurb that NeoFS would be able to stream videos. So is that something that can happen once NeoFS is live on mainnet, or do there need to be more participants offering hardware and storage capacity across the network, or is video streaming something that could potentially go live day one?
It's already possible. I mean, not the live streaming, but streaming the pre-recorded video. So you can build something like YouTube in a distributed setting, decentralized setting. It's already possible, and you can just upload the video of arbitrary size to NeoFS and stream it using the HTTP gateway. We have tailored the HTTP gateway we have to efficiently stream any size objects of any size efficiently without buffering of the whole data. So it just works. You can just take any video player for the web, point it to the video on the NeoFS behind the HTTP gate, and it will just work right now. For the more complex scenarios, maybe you could tailor something on your front-end side, but technically it just works. So one of the features of the NeoFS compared to the other similar systems is that we transparently support large objects. So in the system to efficiently work, we have the fixed limit for the single object. And we support streaming upload on both native API and HTTP API levels. So when you stream the data which exceeds the maximal object size, the NeoFS would transparently break it down into smaller objects. And when your upload complete, you receive the resulting object address, and you can access your large object using this address, and all the magic of mapping this address space to the particular parts will be done by NeoFS nodes behind the scenes automatically. Again, you still can access each object which comprises your large object individually. So all the policies and reliability settings will still work independently, not depending on the object size you have. So maybe that's all.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like it's it sounds like it's one small feature of the great work that you guys have been doing, but it's an easy enough soundbite to kind of share with the world that signals the progress that NeoFS has made. So users can now use their own storage capacity and connect to NeoFS. So I'm wondering if like a regular Neo holder such as myself who just uses like a MacBook Pro can provide storage capacity for NeoFS, and if not, how can a regular Neo holder interact with the network?
As a regular Neo holder, you can host your own storage node. I'm not sure about the MacBook. We didn't test it on Apple hardware extensively. Right now, we officially support only Linux on the x64 platform. We also have a requirement for the CPU to support AVX2 instruction sets because we have a custom implementation of the homomorphic hashing algorithm with optimizations in assembly. So without those instructions, the homomorphic hashing will be painfully slow. So you can have the NeoFS node running on the regular laptop without any problems. But yeah, it will just work. So we have the test bench with a quite cheap hardware, and it works fine. So yes, you can set up your storage node on almost any hardware that can run Linux and that has AVX2 capable CPU.
Awesome.
Uh,
Before we wrap up, I did want to touch upon the Neo Frontier hackathon that's going on right now. And if a user goes into the developer channels on the Neo Discord server, they're going to see a lot of activity. And a lot of hackathon participants are asking questions about different languages, different standards, just various different tools that are available in the Neo blockchain ecosystem. So I'm just curious to hear a little bit more from your perspective. What are some of the conversations that or questions that developers participating in the hackathon right now are asking you and your team about NeoFS?
For the NeoFS, we had questions mostly about integrating the regular web applications with NeoFS mostly. That was a hot topic. We had to fix few bugs for this. That was very interesting, and we were very pleased to see the interest from community and the feedback provided to us. It's very We were very glad to see someone actually trying to use NeoFS through the protocol gateway. That was actually one of the main use cases we wanted to be used by by hackathon participants. The other questions were related to using smart contracts uh, to interact with the economical part of the NeoFS. But that's that's the side of the NeoFS we want to tune up during the testnet. And other questions, they were mostly about the rest of the questions were about the tooling and how to use the NeoFS CLI and how to use NeoFS API. But we hope to cover the API questions and how to use SDK in the workshop briefly, and posted a few articles with a quick start guide. So I think that they will be useful. That's all.
Awesome. So wrapping up, NeoFS is coming to fruition. This is a project that you and your team have been working on for 2+ years, and it's getting to the place where it's going to be used on mainnet, and a regular Neo user like myself can start using it. So as we start getting closer to the end of building the product, and now that there's a functional distributed object storage network that can interact natively with the Neo blockchain, and I can use it. Now that we're here, what are the next steps? What will NeoFS be working on in the next year? Like, what will it look like in the summer of 2022?
There are a lot of things to do in NeoFS. In the optimization of the storage engine, for example. We have many features planned for the post mainnet release in the area of the non-immutable data, maybe. Let's say so. Non-immutable means mutable. Yeah. Sorry. So yes, we plan to update some features for working with mutable data, and what else? Actually, in the NeoFS GitHub repository, we label such features as NeoFS Next. So anyone can go there and see what we're planning to do. But the general direction is to build a true cloud platform that will allow to build the real-world applications in a decentralized setting. So that's the direction we want to develop the NeoFS and the service layers upon it.
Very exciting times for the Neo ecosystem. The culmination of multi-year projects finally launching. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with the Neo News Today podcast today, because I know it's crunch time. You were mentioning you're very busy this week. Users can expect to start seeing lots of rollouts moving forward. So just want to once again thank you for taking the time to come chat with us. It was awesome to have you on, and it was far too long between the last Neo SPCC episode and this one.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure. Actually, that's one of the few podcasts I listen. So that was a pleasure for me.
Well, thank you so much for listening to all the podcasts. And I mean it when I say it. I can't wait to see you and the team again in person at a future event.
Me too. I want to see all the community members live again.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, Stan, and have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, what did you think of that conversation? I enjoyed hearing about the users the Neo SPCC team is targeting and the use cases NeoFS is built for. It was also nice to get a better understanding of how exactly native integration between NeoFS and the Neo blockchain works. And it was great to learn more about how NeoFS is capable of streaming pre-recorded video content. To keep up to date with the latest in the Neo ecosystem, visit www.neonewstoday.com. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and or Spotify. And leave a 5-star review if you feel that others should hear our content. Every subscription and review helps others learn more about the Neo News Today podcast and the Neo ecosystem. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Neo News Today podcast, and we look forward to catching you next time.